Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a while since we did a standalone podcast, but we thought it was time for an update on one of our all time favorite franchises. Today's topic is a controversial one as we ask the question: is the Marvel machine finally breaking down? With the recent departure of noted executives, scandals surrounding key talent, and mixed reception among fans and at the box office, many are questioning the future of a once seemingly unstoppable franchise. But are these concerns warranted, or can Marvel do this all day long? Join us as we weigh the pros and cons when it comes to the current state of Marvel Studios. All you true believers are going to want to stick around for this one. My name is Lord Deathman, and this is the Podcast of Champions. Before we get started, if you're a fan of the MCU and you want to join the conversation, be sure to check out our message board at sakar.freeforums.net. There you can connect with other fans and share thoughts on the latest news and rumors. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook for even more updates and discussion. This will be your first and last warning regarding spoilers. We will be discussing recent Marvel projects, so if you're not caught up on the latest movies and shows, you may want to hit the pause button and come back when you're up to date. Now I'm going to introduce our powerful panel today to discuss the MCU and its current state, starting with the fan without fear. Taylor, how are you doing today?
Doing great.
Great to hear it. Next, we have Merv.
How you doing?
Outstanding, outstanding. And last but certainly not least, we have the Grandmaster.
Hello.
Indeed, indeed, gentlemen. Great to have you here. Always love to hear what you have to say about the Marvel fandom. I'm going to kick us off into our first topic straightaways. This one is something that I think we're going to have a great discussion around, but it is essentially Quantumania. What happened? What happened as far as Quantumania is concerned? And I want to just go over a few, quick statistics here. We have something that is approaching a $500 million box office on a $200 million budget. I think our Rotten Tomatoes score stands at a 47 with critics on the thermometer. And of course, we have a pretty high audience score, 83%. But this particular movie was supposed to kick off phase 5 and give us one of the most talked about and storied villains in Marvel history, backed by a performance that just seemed like it couldn't lose in the marketing as far as Jonathan Majors bringing his talent to the table. I'm going to start with you, Taylor. Where do you think we went wrong with Quantumania, if you think we went wrong at all?
That is a really tough one because I'm a little bit at a loss to explain the low box office. A little bit at a loss. Phase 4 has caused some damage to the brand. And let's be honest, it wasn't all the studio's fault. There was COVID protocols caused a lot of problems. There was a period when they couldn't produce anything, and then they fell behind and they had to get stuff out quickly. And things kept coming up and they had to change schedules. They had to change scripts to not give away something that was supposed to happen later. It must have been a nightmare for them. And the funny thing is, even now, even today, Hollywood is still operating under COVID protocols. Everyone is still wearing masks on set. Everyone is still required to be tested regularly. Everyone is still required to be vaccinated. I don't know if the boosters are required or not. I don't know what all the rules are, but they only announced recently that they're at some point in the future going to lift these strict requirements. And of course, that makes everything that much harder when you're making movies. So I got to give them a little bit of credit for making it through this very difficult period. However, coming off of Endgame, I mean, there's no way they were going to keep that audience. You're not going to get the second biggest money-making movie of all time for every movie going forward. All right, the audience was going to drop off. The first three phases reached a crescendo where there was not just all comic book fans, it was just a general movie going audience had to see what was going on. Right. There's no way they could maintain that kind of momentum. However, during phase 4, there were some stumbles. And by stumbles, I mean some divisive decisions that were made. She-Hulk was the most divisive thing they've ever produced, but it wasn't the only thing that had caused issues. Not having appearing to not have a clear plan, and not having that long form storytelling that we all felt during phases 1, 2, and 3. You know, phase 1, everything in phase 1 led straight to the Avengers. Everything in phase 2 led into the Infinity Stones, and phase 3 led to Endgame. Very clear. You could come into any movie and enjoy it as it's set by itself, and you could also enjoy it as part of the larger story. Then you had Disney Plus, and I don't know if it was the Disney executives or who in charge made the decision that we had to get more content faster. And all of the content just didn't jive the way the previous content had. Yeah. There was side stuff, and it's okay if it's side stuff, but the audience got getting confused. What's the side stuff and what's not the side stuff? Anyway, all that led to some disappointment by hardcore fans who didn't like the decisions that were being made, as well as the more casual fans kind of drifting away a little bit, losing interest, which was bound to happen. Which brings us up to phase 5, right? Quantumania is the start of phase 5, I believe. Yeah. And the critics, definitely a factor. Yeah. When people go to Rotten Tomatoes and they see a 47, because that's another factor, not just for Marvel, but for the whole entertainment industry. Everyone is fighting for customers, fighting for eyes, because there is so many choices out there. Not just movies, not just streaming, not just cable, not just broadcast, not just podcasts, video games, amusement parks. There is just so much entertainment choices out there, which makes me wonder. I mean, I'm not one of those people who thinks movie theaters are going away. I know some people do, but I don't think so at all. But the industry is changing, and expectations need to be adjusted.
Right.
And couple that with the bad critics, the bad word of mouth, people complaining about the special effects, a lot of controversy behind the scenes about visual effects. Yeah. I'm not sure how much the general audience was following that, but it was out there. And then there was this trend of, Marvel, and we'll get into this a little bit later, Marvel, the next generation, for lack of a better word, MCU, the next generation.
Young Marvel.
Right. Now, many franchises have done new generations, and some of them have been very successful. Star Trek, prime example. Although Star Trek: The Next Generation did not happen overnight, there were some stumbles in those first couple of seasons before it became the big success that it was. But it was very successful, and a lot of other franchises have been very successful when they brought in the next generation or the new generation. However, a lot have tried and failed at that as well. And in my opinion, just as a casual observer, most of the time when the next generation is successful, there's been a long period of time. There's been some years, sometimes decades, since the old generation. Now they're almost on top of each other in MCU, and I think that may be causing confusion. Plus, the new generation is, we need a new Iron Man. Let's get a teenage girl. We need a new Hawkeye. Let's get a teenage girl. We need a new Loki, not a teenager, but a girl. We need a new Black Panther, teenage girl. Hey. And we'll talk more about who this audience, who this stuff is supposed to be appealing to at this point.
Yes.
I'll leave it at that.
Fair enough, Taylor. I think a lot of your criticisms are warranted there. It just seems like a number of factors might have conspired to bring Quantumania to where it landed as far as its critical appraisal and its box office performance. But I want to turn to the Grandmaster now, and really, I see you still fly the colors by your background. You're still in it to win it. You're a loyal fan, And we also, let's not forget Taylor's shirt there, which you just showcased for the audience. I know you're still loyal, but I do feel like something went wrong with Quantumania, and I want to try and get at it today. Was it the marketing? Was I mean, remember movies like Thor that almost took themselves too seriously? And then recently we get a Love and Thunder, which just seems like a backdoor pilot for a Thor sitcom. What is the single most thing in your mind that you feel went wrong when it came to Quantumania?
For me, it's Phase 4 that hurt Quantumania because, to be honest, I don't understand the critics' score for Quantumania. I'm like we said in our review, it's maybe not. It's certainly not the greatest MCU film of all time. I mean, that's for sure. But as far as the Ant-Man franchise go, it's by far the best. If you look at what has come out in the last, well, since Endgame, basically, it's certainly top three. So I really don't get it. And audiences, they respond well to it. They just don't show it with their money. And Taylor had an excellent explanation of why that is. I mean, there are too many choices. I mean, back in 2019, you had Netflix and that's it. Now you have like 20 streaming services who are fighting for your dollar and or euro in my case. And yeah, that makes sense. So you can spend your hard-earned money only once. And yeah, let's be honest, if you go to see one movie, you're spending as much as paying for 2 or 3 streaming services in a month. So what would you do? You have more entertainment available if you for less money. And people are going to do that. I mean, so yeah, movie theaters will have to see what they are going to do with to survive. I am with Taylor. I don't think movie theaters will die out. Absolutely not. I mean, that's no way it's going to happen. But they do have a lot more competition now with all those streaming services, and which offer a lot of content and yeah, are basically cheaper options. And those movies will end up on those streaming services. So yeah, people are now more inclined to be patient, I guess, which is to see. They don't rush out to go see movies because also, and that's my point, Phase 4 didn't give them the urgency to rush out to go see movies because let's face it, I like Phase 4. I like a lot of stuff in Phase 4, but the general audience does not. It's a mixed bag for a lot. I mean, Shang-Chi got a lot of positive feedback. Wakanda Forever did. WandaVision did. But the rest, yeah.
Hard to get to those post Endgame levels of anticipation and excitement.
That's true. I mean, what they did with Infinity War and Endgame was so unique and so big and so yeah, everything, even if it was the best thing you ever saw, personally, would be less than that. I mean, that had a buildup of what was it, 11 years from Iron Man to Endgame, and 22 movies, basically almost perfection on screen. For yeah, it's that's hard to top and hard to build on. And they were warning us beforehand. They say Phase 4 is going to be totally different than what you're used to. And well, they were right. It was totally different than what we're used to. And yeah, Disney Plus. We talked about this before. Taylor mentioned it as well. It also hurt Phase 4. I mean, they had to produce a lot more content and do it quickly because this streaming service needed to be a success. And yeah, they actually were not even lucky a bit because we had a year of a year break because of COVID. That gave them a little bit of time to flood the Disney Plus with content. But yeah, in the end, it was little bit too much, too fast. And we get to that in another topic as well, and I will get back on it. It hurts also. You put a lot of pressure, and don't forget, Disney is not the only one putting that pressure. A lot of studios are putting that pressure on the VFX companies to make those shots. So yeah, if you have a lot more to do. In every job, if you have to do more in less time, it's not going to be the same quality of work. And yeah, then the movie critic comes in and they say, yeah, it's lacking. The visuals, everything is lacking. They don't take care of the writing as much as anymore. Mr. Feige is spread too thin over too many projects, so he doesn't have the same supervision anymore. At least that's what people are speculating about. And then you can see it in Phase 4. It lacked the same cohesiveness, the same quality, the same standard as the phases that came before did.
Yeah, same kind of, we need to be there to kind of see how these story threads resolve themselves.
Yeah. And then you have like Quantumania, which on its own is a fine movie. There's not much wrong with it. I don't hate the effects. Yes, you can critique it follows the same Marvel formula, but that formula has worked well in the past, and I still debate there is not such a thing as a Marvel formula. They may use tropes that have been used in like forever in all franchises, so you can't just point the finger at Marvel for that. But Quantumania was a fine film. I liked it a lot. I thought when I saw it, it was a worthy kickoff of Phase 5, and it really got you excited for the future. At least I did that. I even mentioned that in our review. But apparently it doesn't earn the dollar, and I think it's because they have a lot of competition from streaming services, which people are more inclined to spend their money on because they get more content in return.
Yeah. And it's the release schedule strategy. We have to look at that. One of their tactics is to go straight to Disney Plus. They were doing that for a long time. They just stopped recently with Quantumania. So that's going to be available for digital purchase, but it will not go straight to I think the 45-day window to go to Disney Plus after they end the theatrical run is over. But when people were thinking it was in place, that could have impacted Quantumania's performance as well. Why do I have to go see it in the theater when I know that I subscribe to Disney Plus and in 45 days or 30 days or whatever the release window is, it'll be there?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was Wakanda Forever came out in November, early November, I think, and in January it was already on
Yeah, it was already
on Disney Plus. I mean, in 6 to 8 weeks later. I mean, come on, how do you expect to make dollar?
Yeah,
yeah, and then. And people start to expect that, so then they say, why bother spending extra money on a movie ticket if it shows anyway? No, they should wait like half a year for releasing it at least on Disney Plus, like you used to when you went to the movie theater. Half a year later or so, it hit the video store. Yeah, people, I'm that old. I've been to Blockbusters kind of stuff. Like, we didn't have Blockbuster; they were named differently, but you know what I mean. But you had to wait half a year to see it again, or because it had its run all over the world in the movie theater. And I'm not saying you need to do it like that, but yeah, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot if you drop it like 8 weeks later on your own streaming service.
Wow. Okay. Grandmaster, I want to thank you for those notes. If you've just joined us, ladies and gentlemen in the audience, we are discussing a Marvel update, and we're looking in particular at Quantumania. Merv, I want to get with you just for a minute. Hang with me here. You've heard what Taylor had to say. You've heard what the Grandmaster had to say. We have a lot of different factors that could be influencing how things ended up for Quantumania. First off, we have an oversaturation of the market. At this point, people have seen a lot of Marvel stuff, and maybe not much of it is feeling special anymore. We have what I erroneously called post Endgame, loss of audience, but that was actually a pre Endgame. So we can't reach that level of anticipation just because of what Endgame represented as the culmination of the end of the saga. They're trying to introduce a new generation of characters. We don't have the same level of connectedness anymore as far as the storytelling is going. And then on top of that, we're dealing with what Taylor and Grandmaster rightfully articulated as a dynamically changing marketplace. People have a lot of options. You can stay home, watch some of this stuff on a great 4K television rather than shelling out for the theatrical experiences. But my question to you, Merv, is is this just a bunch of excuses, or was Quantumania not a good movie?
No, I agree with pretty much all the excuses. I didn't have much issue with Quantumania as a film, but yeah, I think it's more indicative of the overall kind of, I don't want to say bursting in the bubble of the MCU, pop culture relevance, but it hardly feels like these are must see movies. You know what I mean? Like when Infinity War came out, you could overhear conversations all day long. But when Quantumania came out, like, did you see it yet? No. Are you gonna go see it? Maybe. Like it's just a totally different pop culture relevance at this point. And I don't know if it's in the works to bring that back for Marvel. Maybe it's too late. Maybe it's just inevitable. When you think about the history of pop culture, like everything fades. You know what I mean? Like, believe it or not, the Beatles aren't as popular as they were in the 60s. You know what I mean? Like it's everything fades. So maybe it's time for the MCU and maybe the superhero genre as a whole to fade. But as far as Ant-Man Quantumania goes, like, personally, I didn't have much issue with it, but you can't argue that it did have mixed results, critically and audience-wise. Like, I just think people have seen some of it before. It didn't feel maybe as grand as people were hoping. I mean, I personally had a few issues with that. Just the stakes of it, and I don't know. I just think it kind of became forgettable almost overnight. Like it may eventually, be the foundation for Phase 5, but at the moment, it just feels like just another movie. And I'll say, like, the Ant-Man films themselves were never really the MCU cash cow either. Right. The first two Ant-Man films weren't, the top two highest grossing MCU films. I think they were way on the bottom end of things. So, to expect the third film to somehow shatter that ceiling whenever, like, I get that they threw Kang in there, as they showed audience that this is who your new big bad's going to be, but it's also, they're showing this to the audience that is already post Endgame, it's already fatigued, and is already, like, been through the mixed bag of Phase 4. So, it's a lot harder to get people on board, especially when the movie isn't great. Like, it isn't perfect. I'm not saying it's not a good movie, but when when I was thinking about this movie, I compared it to, like, Guardians of the Galaxy, the movie, the first one. And it was like nobody knew who those people were. Everyone was skeptical about it because up to that point, like, the MCU was largely, kind of realistic. I get that it's not super realistic, but it didn't stray too far. But then now we're getting a team of strangers who are in spaceships flying around dealing with aliens with a talking tree and a raccoon. But everyone who went to see it talked about it and talked about how great it was and how you had to see it. It was great. It was one of the best things ever. And then it went on to, be in theaters for months after that, making Disney money. And that comes back to a point that both Taylor and Grandmaster made, which is, I looked today to see if I could get a movie ticket. I was just curious if it was still in theaters. My local theater, the one that I go to all the time, doesn't have any showings. And the only one that I could find within my general area, there was one showing every day this week. There's one showing, and it's like a 1:30 showing. So if you wanted to go see Ant-Man, you're like, maybe I'll see what the theater is. You have to be there at 1:30, and that's the only showing they have it. So they have it at 1:30 in one theater for one time a day, and that's it. And this is 8 weeks. It's like 8 weeks later. You know what I mean? Compare that to, Top Gun Maverick from last year. There is staying power in theater whenever there isn't the other option of, it's gone and now it's on a streaming service. And okay, why didn't it make any money? Well, because 2 months later, you can't make any more box office money if you're not there. So I think all the points that Taylor and Grandmaster mentioned were pretty much taking all my notes away. The only other one I had was that Ant-Man isn't really the cash cow. He was never the most popular Avenger. Sad to say.
Indeed. Well, there you have it from the panel. It's a complex mix of factors that affected Quantumania's performance. We're going to get more into the discussion, kind of dive deeper into what's going on at Marvel. I want to introduce our next topic by first just starting with the resume. Hostiles, The Five Bloods, Devotion, Creed 3, Lovecraft Country. Jonathan Majors really arrived on the scene like a bolt of lightning. He has some of the most kinetic, energetic performances that I've ever seen. He is deeply devoted to his craft, obviously, just by looking at the work that he does. But recently, he found himself running afoul of the Hollywood scandal machine. And I think it's worth talking about because Mr. Majors is the linchpin of Marvel strategy moving forward. He is playing the villain, Kang, and Kang is going to be the overarching threat moving forward in Phase 5. Now, if you don't already know, I'm not going to go into the details or the back and forth, but Jonathan Majors was arrested for domestic violence, domestic abuse of a female partner in New York City. Now, whether he is guilty or whether he is not guilty, I do not know, and I don't care to speculate. But what I do want the panel to speculate on is this going to be a huge problem for the MCU, for Marvel? Because we've seen people get totally tossed off the scene and canceled for less these days. And I'm not going to talk about, what that is all about. But that being said, I'm going to start the conversation with you, Grandmaster. What do you think here? What happens if Majors can't resume his work? What happens to the MCU Phase 5? What do you think the ramifications are going to be?
Yeah, this is pure speculation at this point, but let's say he is found guilty, has to do some jail time, and that interferes with his contract with Marvel, and I think maybe even in some way they would welcome a break to spread things out, make even more adjustments, and take some more care of the product that they are putting out. But besides that, I think they just would recast. It's not like a Chadwick Boseman situation. I mean, everybody would understand why. I mean, they recast Terrence Howard at some point. They recast Edward Norton at some point. They made those decisions before. They were for. This is also a side note. By the way, why can't they recast William Hurt pick Harrison Ford as his replacement, but they couldn't recast Chadwick Boseman? Is one death more important than the other? But anyway, side note. They would just recast, I guess. If
would be your preference, or do you think it would just be strategically the right thing for them to do?
Both. I mean, to me, by the way, they don't need to recast Jonathan Majors. I'm not aware of any if he's guilty or innocent. I don't know, and I don't care to speculate. People make mistakes all the time, and everybody deserves a second chance. And usually these kind of issues are spur of the moment thing, and of course I'm not gonna say they're okay. Absolutely not. You should keep your hands to yourself, but in the end, things happen. You get punished or not, and then you can move on with your life. It would be ridiculous if you cannot work anymore somewhere because you made one mistake. If that's the case, again, that's pure speculation from my side, and I have no further knowledge or interest actually. Yeah, they would just recast if it's impossible to work with him anymore because of whatever. They would just recast and they move on, and that would be the smart move to go to do, and makes most sense to me. And yeah, I would support that.
Fair enough. Moving on to you, Taylor. Do they shelf this character and this set of story threads, or do we just recast? And again, I want to emphasize that there's a real possibility that this scandal could end Jonathan Majors' careers. Again, we've seen it happen with other actors who have been accused of this kind of thing. That being said, Taylor, what do you think?
Yeah, of course, Jonathan Majors and his lawyers say he's 100% innocent, and I hope he is. Unfortunately, the justice system moves very slowly. Even if he is 100% innocent, it may take a while before that's established in court and that they're unable to prove his guilt. However, Disney and Marvel have to make business decisions. And if it takes too long, they have no choice but to recast. They can't change the entire storyline for Phase 5 and 6 at this point. They're just going to have to recast. At some point, they're going to have to make the decision to recast Kang. I think there's a bigger problem with Kang himself. We'll probably talk about that later, the character. But as far as the actor goes, I think he's a great actor, but there are other great actors who can play the part if it comes to that. I just hope, if there's a speedy resolution and turns out he's not guilty and charges are dropped and he can go back to work.
Indeed. I would hope for the same resolution, assuming that he is innocent of all charges. So, yeah, wishing him the best of luck. But finally, Merv, we're going to get your take on the Jonathan Majors situation. Where do you fall? Would you want to recast? Would you want them to shelf the Kang storyline for a little bit? Do you think it's too late to do that? What are your thoughts?
Well, without knowing exactly what they have planned for everything outside of, Loki and Quantumania, I would probably, at least initially, approach it cautiously from Marvel's side of things, and just kind of, if damning evidence comes out, then you can make a rash decision. But until then, I'd probably play it a little slow. But as Taylor said, these things could take a while to resolve. So at some point, you're just going to have to make a decision whether or not the bad publicity is worth the good actor or whether it isn't. And I don't, based on what our previous conversation is, I don't know if Marvel can handle bad publicity at this point. They might find themselves in DCEU land pretty soon if things could blow up, and like I said, I think I initially wait, but at some point it's either you got to take the bad and the good, or take the good and the bad, and I wish there were either more damning evidence or no damning evidence at all. You know what I mean? But then everything would be simple, and there would be no reason for judges and lawyers. I'd slow play it.
Yeah, there's a lot of shades of gray to the situation. It's still developing, as you know. But the DA in New York felt that they had a basis for arresting him. So I wouldn't do that if I were DA and I didn't feel like I could make a case. So it's not a great sign for Mr. Majors there. But I want to circle back to Grandmaster to take his follow up.
Yeah, I just want to point out that Marvel has a bad history of making rash decisions that they actually have to reverse at a certain moment. Remember Comic-Con, I think it was 2018, where James Gunn all of a sudden, no, 2017, sorry, where James Gunn all of a sudden got fired because of 10-year-old tweets, which a few months later they turned back the clock on that. And then had to rehire him because they figured, hey, wait a minute, we made a stupid decision based on some pressure on Twitter, which lasted for 3 days, and then we reversed the process back because James Gunn is more important than 10-year-old tweets with some questionable jokes. But yeah, of course this is a total different situation, but I would advise Marvel not to take a rash decision and await innocent until proven guilty. That's one thing. And second of all, like Taylor said, you have a business decision to make, and to kick somebody out right away would be a very bad business decision in my view.
Agreed. I think we can all agree that that's a reasonable position. But one thing is for sure, a a franchise that has been reasonably scandal free for the last decade plus is now facing its first real challenge. The DCEU has been it's scandal after scandal, like they live in scandal land, and they still manage to get the movies out. But this is Disney, this is Kevin Feige, this is the Marvel Studios' first test of really having to deal with an out and out uncontested scandal. I think with James Gunn it was a little different because we were dealing with tweets that people found offended their sensibilities, but we weren't dealing with like a convictable crime, right? He hadn't been arrested, there hadn't been any charges, and you know, for better or worse, we all kind of know that James Gunn is just a weird guy. But
True, but still, I wouldn't make a rash decision based on accusations, because basically that's that's what we're talking about, right?
yes, yes,
Exactly.
to a very large extent, we are talking about how does Marvel strategize and not add this particular problem to the growing list of problems that they seem to be having as far as maintaining the quality of the franchise. But all right, I'm gonna stop and take a minute to thank the panel for their incredible thinking power. The brain trust here is amazing today, and if you're still listening, you're definitely gonna want to hang on for this next discussion, where we talk about someone who you probably don't know who she is, but she's likely the second most pivotal executive at Marvel Studios working today. Her name is Victoria Alonso, and she is in charge of she was in charge of physical production at Marvel Studios, as well as all of the VFX, which have come under fire. We're going to talk about that a little later on in the show today, but specifically the drama surrounding Victoria Alonso's departure or her firing, or however it played out, depending on whether you're talking to her representatives or the folks at Marvel Studios. She was fired, she was let go, it was wrongful, it was justified. But I want to lay it out really quickly here. Again, Victoria Alonso's probably second only to Kevin Feige in terms of influence at Marvel Studios. She was recently fired from her position there. And the reason that Disney Studios gave was breach of contract. So they were firing for cause. Apparently, Victoria Alonso had been involved in the production as a producer on a non Disney film called Argentina 1985, if I believe. And this was a breach of her contract, which she was warned about, apparently in writing and on the record, that the studio did not want her involved with that particular film. But this was a passion project of hers. So not only did she continue to produce the film, but she decided to show up at the Academy Awards, not to support the nominated Wakanda Forever, but to support this smaller film, Argentina 1985. According to Disney, this was the straw that broke the camel's back, and they decided to let her go. Victoria Alonso quickly fired back and said that she was fired because she was asked to perform a reprehensible action that was against her morals, and that she wanted nothing to do with. She was asked to censor, I think, LGBTQ related material in a Marvel film overseas. I don't quite remember which film it was, but she refused to do it. The studio then had to hire outside to engage an outside firm to do that work. And she's saying that she was fired as a result of that. I want to go around the table today, starting with you, Merv. Again, number 2 at the studio, in charge of visual effects, which have recently come under fire, in charge of all physical production. I think Victoria Alonso, to a certain extent, might have even thought, with the level of influence and success that she's brought to the studio, that she was just too big to fire. This is another problem in the growing list of problems for the studio. What's your take on it?
Nobody's too big to fire unless you're the owner.
Right, unless you're Bob.
What's that?
Unless you're Bob Iger,
Right.
You could get fired.
Unless you're Walt Disney, you have nothing to worry about.
Yeah, I mean, given some of the criticisms we've been getting on VFX, Marv, do you think that this is a good thing, her ouster, or is it more trouble for the studio?
I don't think it's necessarily I don't think it's publicly a good look for Marvel, just because I think a lot of people look at it as just another crack in the foundation of their studio at this point. With bad movies, now we're firing people. It just, in a brief sense, it doesn't look good to, I think, the general public, I would assume. I honestly don't see much issue with it, though. Especially as a company as big as Disney, I would expect a lot more personnel to be in and out a lot more frequent than 20 years. The fact that she's been there that long is kind of surprising to me, honestly. I just, big corporations, I just feel like it's a revolving door of, you get this opportunity, that opportunity, you move up the ladder, down the ladder, whatever it is. It kind of reads normal to me. I don't necessarily think she's a scapegoat and anything, just because nobody is saying that this, neither her nor the studio is saying this is because of visual effects. Her side of things is saying it's because it was a LGBT thing, and then the other side is saying it's because she was secretly producing some competitive movie. So I haven't really heard or read anything that really says that she was let go because of visual effects. Now, obviously, it doesn't help that one of the bigger criticism lately is visual effects, although I don't really I think the Marvel movies themselves have large visual effects budgets, and so it's easy to critique something like that. It's like critiquing, the weapons firing in a Rambo movie. There's just so much to pick from that, of course, you can find things that look wrong. You know what I mean? But yeah, I don't really see this as I personally don't really see this as a bad thing, but I do think, given the total package that is the MCU right now, this isn't a good look for them. The fact that anyone's getting fired at all isn't a good look.
Yeah, especially when we're sort of dealing with films that are not performing at the level that they should be. We don't know if this is what kind of signal this sends out.
Right.
Thank you for that, Merv. I want to go to Taylor next. 17 years with the studio. Number 2, second only to Kevin Feige, outspoken LGBTQ proponent and Latina. What are the optics on this for you? Is this just another executive ouster, or was there something more at play going on here?
Well, I mean, of course, I'll speculate, but it is just speculation. As you've noted, the official reason is breach of contract. And again, I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but I believe like you said, the straw that broke the camel's back, i.e. the breach that caused the actual firing wasn't just the production of the other movie, it was the promoting of it, which apparently is a direct violation of her contract. And if she directly violated her contract in public on the red carpet with a bunch of cameras pointed at her, they have to fire her. If they've fired anyone below her for breaching their contract, they have to also fire her for breaching her contract. You can't, otherwise you're labeled with, oh, the big executives have rules for them and the rest of us have other rules.
Right.
Now, is there other things going on? Again, we can speculate. Now, a lot of people are saying, the quality problems, if they exist at the MCU, aren't her fault. She just does VFX. She doesn't write the stories. Well, as the number 2, as you pointed out, she was sitting right next to Kevin Feige at all those board meetings. I can guarantee you she had input in the development process. she was able to say what she wanted to have happen. And if some people, people are speculating online that she may have been responsible for certain decisions and certain projects that were a problem. I don't think the visual effects part really is a big piece of her dismissal. There is a problem with VFX across Hollywood, and Marvel's, as Merv pointed out, Marvel does more VFX than anybody else. But the problem is the capacity to produce all these visual effects as quickly as possible, and is with the money available and the time and the people, blah blah blah. All right, it's massive, and that's a big problem. And of course, the compressed timeline after COVID protocols, when we had to get so much out so fast, exacerbated it even more. But then there's also the fandom, and the fandom. When Mandalorian season 1 came out, everyone online was hailing the volume. Oh my God, this is the greatest thing for movie making and TVs since sliced bread. All right, this is the greatest thing since rear projection. All right, it's gonna change the business. By the time Quantumania comes out, everyone's online. Oh, they're using the volume again. I'm so sick of the volume. Quantumania, why can't they build real sets? Why can't they shoot outside? Well, the outside doesn't look like the quantum realm. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But so again, she had a tough job being in charge of visual effects. I'll give her that. But again, that's all my thoughts on it. If she's in breach of contract, and if they fire people for breach of contract, she can't be above the rule. She has to be fired. And optics don't look good for a while, but like Merv said, there's always churn. There's always turnover in these studios.
Right. And it is kind of surprising that her tenure lasted as long as it did. I will say for my part that I have seen a slight dip in the quality of the visual effects at Marvel Studios in terms of some of the output. But I think that really goes towards the overproduction. I'm sure they asked Victoria to scale up her operations to deal with, at one point, I imagine she was dealing with 1 or 2 films a year. Then she moves into 4 films a year plus Disney Plus shows. I think it, would only be normal that you would see some cracks in the veneer there. But Grandmaster, last but certainly not least on this topic, do you think that Victoria should have said no, and should have raised her hand and said, you know what, guys, I can't do 4 films a year. I can't do 5 or 6 TV shows a year. There's going to be some problems. Do you think she was a scapegoat and this was a convenient excuse for Disney to let her go? Or what was the cause justified based on, what you know of her situation?
To quote Louise, yes. No, seriously, I do think that. I'm not gonna say she was fired because of VFX or anything. No, I believe the official story, and like Taylor said, if she breaks her contract like that, or she does something in violation of her contract, there's only one way out. I mean, if I tell a competitor of my employer the secrets of my employer, then I'm out as well. I mean, it's as simple as that. And I'm not saying she did that, but you know what I mean. It's as simple as that. However, I do think Marvel Studios realized after Bob Iger's return and the critique on Phase 4 and everything that's going on, they had a problem in their company, and I do think Kevin Feige took this opportunity to shake things up and see if he can make adjustments and improvements on the short term. It's not for nothing. We have had a delay of so many things recently, and basically the news came out. We're gonna spread out and take our time a little bit more. Right after Bob Iger returned to Disney, that was the first course of action. So yeah, I do think that they used her as a kind of scapegoat. Not so much that they blame her for everything that's going on. They just want to change things up and see if they can improve. And they use this to do that. And yes, I do think that she should have said back in 2019 when those plans were announced for Disney Plus shows and movies and stuff like that. She should have raised her hand and said, hey, maybe this is not a good idea because I'm going to be spread too thin, just like you, Kevin, and that has the potential to hurt our quality. Maybe they were confident, maybe they thought they were untouchable. I mean, I remember that moment when they stood up on that stage in 2019 in San Diego and they could announce that Avengers Endgame had just passed Avatar as the highest grossest movie of all time. And I vividly remembering Victoria Alonso doing a victory dance on stage because of that announcement. And yeah, maybe they were cocky and maybe they thought we can pull this off. Of course, we're going to put all that content on Disney Plus and it's going to be as great as it was. And maybe they realized that maybe they need a voice, need a fresh perspective on things, and that's why they did it.
I tend to agree. I'm sure this firing was convenient for Disney, but the cause is the cause. There's really no holes in the argument. She did contract, and they have the right to take a very specific action when that happens, which includes firing her. Now, just to put this into a little bit more context, in 2021, Alonso was promoted, and I want you to listen to all of the things she was in charge of: president of physical and post production, visual effects, and animation production. To me, that sounds like an executive that has a little too much on their plate. Rumors, and I don't like to go too much by rumors, but rumors had it that her relationship with the visual effects community was strained at the very least, that she was not communicating well with them. She was pushing them, especially on No Way Home. It seems like we reached some kind of breaking point with visual effects, with all of the change orders they were asking for to maintain secrecy, even in the marketing and in the trailers. So that being said, it seems like she had a lot on her plate, and she pissed maybe some people off. And I think we all know that the VFX community in Hollywood they're under a lot of pressure. They're trying to get unionized. They are trying to, sort of get realistic deadlines and scheduling on the table for what it is they do. So very complex situation, but it seems that we unanimously feel on the panel that Victoria Alonso's ousting probably represented a change that Disney needed to make in order to improve their situation. Yeah. So that being said, to tie up that particular topic thread, and again, guys, I want to thank you for sounding off on this. Our next topic, little bit of one that really hits me close to home. You guys know what a fascist and what a Nazi I am about spoiler culture. I really hate it. It's just something that annoys the crap out of me. But recently, the entire closed captioning for Quantumania, and I'm shocked we didn't really bring this up during the Quantumania discussion as a potential factor for why the movie might have not performed as well as it did. But all of the closed captioning, as in the discernible plot of the movie, had been posted to Reddit well in advance of the movie being released. And spoiler culture is just way out of control. The speculation machine, especially when it comes to Marvel movies, I don't know what neurological tick in the human animal makes you want to know everything that's going to happen before a movie comes out. But it's really hard to deal with on a certain level. And I wanted to broach the topic here with the panel. So Marvel went after these people, and fairly aggressively, with a lawsuit against Reddit to try and have them reveal the identity of the person who leaked the captioning for Quantumania on Reddit. Some people even speculate that it was Victoria Alonso herself. Although that's a wild one. That's out there. And not provable. Rumors. So I'm going to start with you, Grandmaster. Do we need to add the spoiler culture, the cult of spoilers, into the mix as a reason for some of the disappointments we're experiencing with Marvel recently?
Again, yes, because up until Endgame, this wasn't so much of an issue. Actually, they were very good at keeping their secrets. And you mentioned the Quantumania plot leaked online on Reddit, but we actually had a thread on the board that it was true for Eternals as well. I mean, somebody found something on Reddit, posted a thread on our board, and I didn't read it back then, but when I saw the movie and I stumbled across that thread, it was exactly the movie. But I think it makes sense if you start to produce a lot more content. You have to bring in a lot more people, so it's harder to keep a secret. I mean, it's as simple as that. And the more people know, the less likely it's gonna things are gonna stay a secret. So yeah, uh, it, but with postponing everything and stretching it out, things out again, that's also a way of getting those spoilers back under control, I guess, because you need less people, so less chance of spoiling. So yeah, spoiler culture definitely has a role to play in this problem for Marvel Studios recently, because their movies got leaked online, and yeah, if you know the story, why bother go see it?
Yeah.
That's always my point. Why it's necessary to make change from source material when you do an adaptation, because if you do the same thing, it's no longer interesting. So yeah, that's how I see things.
Indeed. Indeed. Thank you for the commentary, Grandmaster. I'm going to jump over to Merv now. Lawsuit against Google and Reddit over the leaked Ant-Man script. Is Marvel chasing shadows? Is this not their problem? Or do they really need to sort of plug the leaks, and have the rats kind of jump out? What do you think the impact of spoiler culture is on the Marvel machine today?
I mean, for their own, company, Marvel, I do think they want to plug the leaks and keep things from drifting out and keep spoilers from reaching people who don't otherwise want them. But I don't know how much of an impact it has, and I don't honestly think it has a huge impact on like box office numbers or anything like that. But I do think it's largely almost a personal, and I hate spoilers, spoiler culture. I hate the people who go out of their way to make sure that you get spoiled for something. There's a reason it's called spoiler, it's not a good thing. But I do think there's a bit of a personal, it's almost a personal battle. Like, if I'm going to go see this movie, I might want to steer clear of certain things and maybe not read the entire, Reddit
Right.
thread that broke down the entire movie.
Oh,
But like, if something gets flashed in my face or whatever, that's annoying. But like I don't necessarily think it ruins things. But that's a very personal opinion. And there's probably some people out there who, the second they know that, like, I don't know, that Natasha dies in Endgame, they're like, oh my god, I'm not gonna go see it now. Like, you just ruined it for me, But to me, like, unless it's a mystery where like there's a killer reveal, like that's the only spoiler that really ruins a movie for me, or could potentially ruin a movie. It might not even ruin it. Sometimes it's better, but yeah, I just think, like, as far as their company goes, they want to plug the leaks. I don't know, as far as the lawsuit goes, like how much there is to stand on as far as like revealing, people, and so that they can directly sue these individuals or whatever. But I just think they really need to take a look at their own house and make sure that, the people there aren't
right.
sliding things
Are
out the
actively
door,
maybe
up
working
announcements.
against them,
What's that? I'm sorry.
to make sure that the people who are there with them aren't actively working against them.
Right, right. I mean, I'm sure, there's disgruntled employees everywhere, so it wouldn't surprise me if there were disgruntled employees at Marvel who would love to see the ship fall. But at the same time, it's, they want to plug it. They want to plug the holes. And I get that, but I don't know if I don't know if it's all that important in the grand scheme of things. I don't think that the leaked, Reddit thing is the reason that Ant-Man 3 didn't make as much money as it could have.
No.
I don't think that's anywhere near the biggest reason.
So if you were in charge of the ship, you probably wouldn't dedicate too many resources to tracking down the perpetrators of these spoiler crimes.
I would fire everyone immediately and just bathe in my wealth for being in charge of Marvel. No, I really, I mean, I wouldn't. I don't know what, I don't even know the first thing about what you would do to, like, obviously if the script is going into people's hands, like, who are those people? You know what I mean? But how do you, as they've said already, but when you've got this number of people working on a project, it's harder and harder to keep everything reined in. Like,
I think Marvel needs a good disinformation campaign, like the waste baskets in the conference rooms. Just put balled up paper with fake plot points in them, and see if the janitors come to get some tips there.
the problem with that is, what if the fake plot points are better than the ones that they're actually creating? You know what I mean?
Fair enough. Well, thank you, Merv, for signing off on this. Taylor, the spoiler industrial complex, you know how much I hate it. Is Marvel right to be getting this aggressive about plugging some of these leaks, or is their time, better spent in other areas trying to get the movies back on track?
No, they are right. They need to do everything possible, up to and including horse whipping, to get people to stop leaking. Yeah. I hate leaks. I literally plan my online life around avoiding spoilers. I block friends of mine because they are people who like to post freaking spoilers during, the lead up to movies and so on. I sometimes have to block people on our own board, sakara.freeforums.net, everybody. I sometimes have to block friends there because they run off at the mouth sometimes, and they get so excited when they find a spoiler. So I do everything I can to avoid spoilers, and I think Marvel and every other studio should do everything possible to avoid spoilers. And Marvel has done a good job overall. I mean, we hear stories. We hear, we've seen interviews with actors saying they literally get locked in a room with a computer and a minder there who's literally there watching them to make sure they're not writing anything down, and they have to study their lines on the script for a certain amount of time and get up and then leave the room without any hard copies or anything like that. It's a pity that they have to do that, but I think they should do everything. But having said all of that they should do everything possible to stop spoilers. Spoilers are not the reason for their box office and viewership problems. Not at all.
Fair enough. But you're a man after my own heart as far as dealing with the spoiler complex. I do think we need to get out the guillotines and let them face the consequences, because it really does ruin my enjoyment when I get a big spoiler on a movie that I've been looking forward to a while. It can really hurt the experience. But it, as you say, it doesn't stop me from buying the ticket and see the movie. So perhaps it isn't as justified to have to deal with all of this kind of drama that they're bringing as far as the legal with Reddit and Google. But still, something should be done about it. And if James Cameron could spend 13 years working on Avatar 2 and have us know nothing about the plot of that movie, I think Marvel, with a bit more in terms of resources, could manage the same tricks from year to year. But Merv, you wanted to follow up?
Just wanted to say, along the same lines, the people who make the movie trailers need to tone it down a little bit, because most of the time the trailers give away way too much of the story, more than any. I'm more likely to come across a trailer that gives away too much than a Reddit thread that gives away too much. So just want to throw that in there on the pile of, stop showing me the whole movie in the trailer.
Marvel doesn't do that, by the way.
Well, I'm not speaking specifically. I'm just saying.
No. But I think Marvel doesn't have that issue. In fact, they have the opposite issue. They show sometimes stuff in the trailer that's not in the movie.
And there are people who are such big Marvel fans or have turned Marvel into a cottage industry for profiting on spoilers that they will analyze these trailers down to the last frame and be like, well, it's daytime here by the position of the sun, so I know that it's 2/3 into the movie, and he took his hat off,
Right.
so and then you got a leaked plot on Reddit based on someone trying to detangle a trailer. But great talk here on a controversial subject. I'm going to take the last follow up from Taylor on spoilers and how it might be impacting Marvel Studios' performance today.
Yeah, I'm sorry, real quick, just following up. I literally listened to a podcast that analyzed the first Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 trailer, and they literally said because of a particular character had a particular scene with a particular type of lighting on them, that character's going to die. That's what they said. That is what they said. All right.
That's
now, as far as Quantumania, I didn't even know about the leak from Quantumania until after I'd seen the movie. So I enjoyed the movie, and I did not know anything about the Reddit thing because like I said, do everything I can to avoid spoilers.
Yeah. And more power to you if you want spoilers. It's just like you can't disseminate. You've got to, everyone has to make their own decision and should be able to go on social media free from the fear that you might feel that someone is going to post a critical plot point in a movie that you'd rather not know about. But in any event, no matter how you feel about spoilers, ladies and gentlemen in the audience, I want you to hang around for our next topic. And this one's a good one. This one is where we're going to get the panel to sound off on some future releases as far as Marvel Studios goes. I want to know what each of the panel members thinks. What's their prognosis for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3? And for bonus points, you can talk to me about the Marvels. So I don't think either of those movies needs a lot of setup in terms of me talking to you about it. Volume 3 is a long awaited finisher to the trilogy of the very successful trilogy of Guardians that I think is beloved by most Marvel fans. But people are wondering, is this going to suffer from the Quantumania curse? Number 3's, starting to go down the drain. And then we've heard some things that, we've heard some spoilers out of spoiler culture about what the Marvels is going to entail. I'm not going to go over them here because they're highly speculative and they're very disturbing if that's what they intend to make the movie out for real. But let's start with Taylor on this one. How do you think things are going to work out for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and perhaps the Marvels?
I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is going to do very well. It's a beloved franchise. The characters are beloved. Everyone knows that it's at least as one group. This is the last time we're going to see these characters. Everyone knows that some of the characters will probably not be seen again in the MCU, or at least no time soon. So I think they'll do pretty well. The first two movies did, extremely well. Neither of them made $1 billion, though, by the way. Everyone acts like if a movie doesn't make $1 billion these days, it's some kind of a flop. But making $1 billion has always been extremely rare, and it's going to become even more rare because of what we talked about earlier and all the competition for entertainment eyes and dollars at this point. So if your business model relies on all your movies making $1 billion, you're in for a rude awakening. Okay, James Gunn, because that ain't gonna happen. But I do think the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 will do very well. All right, will it make $1 billion? I doubt it. Like I said, neither of the previous ones did. They came fairly close. I think the second one made 800 something million. But I'm not worried about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I think it's going to do quite well. A lot of other Marvel movies have done very well recently. I mean, No Way Home made 1.9 billion or something like that. So I'm not afraid of them doing poorly in Guardians of the Galaxy. The Marvels might be a different story. You got three main characters. You've got Captain Marvel, whose first movie I love and did extremely well, made over $1 billion. However, the timing played a factor. It was in between Infinity War and Endgame. If it came out at a different time, I think it still would have done well, but I don't think it would have done nearly as well. I don't think it would have made over $1 billion by a long shot. But it was very successful, so that's actually a plus for the Marvels, is that Captain Marvel is there leading it. Other character, Ms. Marvel. Ms. Marvel's TV series was a darling of the critics. I enjoyed it. I know a lot of people that really loved it, but I believe it was the least viewed series of all the Marvel shows so far. So it doesn't have a huge fan base. And again, who is the core fandom for comic book movies? I'm not sure. It's teenage girls. And we can talk more about that going forward. All right, but they played this up as being, it's going to be like a Nickelodeon show. Well, is that the right way to market superhero movies? I'm not sure. But then the third main character is Monica Rambeau. And Monica Rambeau was introduced in WandaVision, which is a huge success. Critics loved it, fans loved it. Had a lot of good nature going forward. Led right into Quantumania, led right into Doctor Strange, which did extremely well at the box office, extremely well. So a lot of good thoughts there. However, when people talk about WandaVision, they talk about Wanda, they talk about Vision, they talk about Agatha Harkness. I don't hear them talking about Monica Rambeau very much.
Yeah.
I don't think she's a major draw at this point. And again, all depending on what the mood is when it comes out, and the stuff that happens between now and then, and the marketing. And of course, it always comes down to quality. If it's a great movie with great writing, it'll do fine. But I think there's a real danger there with the Marvels at this point, just because I don't see it as the big major draw that they would like it to be.
Okay. And just to make sure I'm hearing you right, it really, with the Marvels, it's not really about the sort of girl power there, but we're just we've got a divisive lead. I think it's fair to say that Brie Larson is kind of a polarizing figure in the MCU. You either love her or you hate her. We have Iman Vellani, who's a charming, a beautiful, talented young actress, and then we also have but very talented, but not beloved in terms of her character. Then we have Tiona Paris as Monica Rambeau, who, as again, Taylor, you're absolutely right in saying not a lot of conversation around her character, not a lot of hype. And you're thinking that these factors might be the recipe for a disappointment as far as the Marvels goes.
Yeah, and since you brought up the girl power thing, let me go ahead and go off on a tangent here. Not all fans are the same. I like superhero stories. I don't care if it's a male superhero or a female superhero. I loved Wonder Woman. I loved Captain Marvel. I loved Black Widow. I loved all of those movies, and I love Iron Man and Thor and everybody else. Okay, but that's just me. Other people have different, taste, and it's not a matter of sexism. They hate women or they hate men. It's a matter of taste. No one has any problem saying that Wonder Woman was made to appeal to a female audience. Okay, but then at the same time, it's not appealing to the male audience. Well, who's the biggest audience for comic book movies? Males. It just is. It's like sports, The WNBA does not get the same views as the NBA because one, there's more male sports fans than there are female sports fans, and a lot of female sports fans like the male sports more than they like the female sports because of the quality of the product, which has been a problem with female superhero movies historically. I mean, I can give you the list: Supergirl, Sheena, Tank Girl, Barbed Wire, Catwoman, Elektra. What do they all have in common? Flop, 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 flop. And mostly due to writing, not because they were a female character, but they seem to have a problem writing female superheroes, or at least they did in the past until Wonder Woman happened. But again, there are lots of female superhero fans who like watching male superheroes just as much as they like female superheroes. And if they think a female superhero movie is not going to be the same quality as then they're not going to watch it just because it's a female superhero. All right, they want good quality stories just like the male superhero fans do. And some of them, they're always talking about we need heroes that look like me. Well, again, the vast majority of your potential audience is male, and doesn't matter to me, but to some of them, maybe they only want to see heroes that look like them. So you're going to have a lesser sized audience sometimes for female-led superheroes. It's just and again, it's just a matter of personal taste and what people respond to. It's not about hate or anything.
Right. It's not a gender or sort of a political issue when we're
No, it's
talking
not.
about it. Yeah. And I, for one, am really grateful that a lot of talented women have had opportunities to shine in this genre, especially with Marvel Studios. I have my fingers crossed for the Marvels because I think Nia DaCosta is an extremely talented director. I loved her adaptation of Candyman. And a movie, a bomb like this with the big studio could derail her career, and I'd like to see more stuff from her in the future. But Taylor, thank you for skillfully and thoughtfully navigating a really tough subject when it comes to female-led superhero films. So next, I do want to jump over to Merv and get your take, your prognosis for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and the Marvels, if you'd like to comment on that. I know it's a little farther out. Are you one of those people that just has a lot of faith in James Gunn's storytelling ability and you think it can overcome some of the issues that Marvel's having now and kind of even maybe get the franchise back on track?
I I will say I don't think Guardians 3 is going to be a flop by any means. I think people are going to go see it. I think it's going to make, hundreds of millions of dollars. Whether or not it's a box office success based on the budget it has, I have no idea. But I do think that a lot of people are going to go to see it. And I think I'm hoping if it's anywhere near the level of quality from the first two films out of James Gunn, then it's going to be an enjoyable ride. That's always my hope, that I enjoy it first and foremost. But I think it'll be fine in that regard. I don't actually. I see it as more of a capstone end point than I do lifting up the remainder of the MCU, because I think a lot of people, myself included, are going to go see it thinking this is potentially the end of the Guardians of the Galaxy. So I don't necessarily think it's going to lead into the next adventure. I think it's going to be more of like, okay, well, that is a satisfying end to our heroes here. Whether or not they totally disappear or not, I think everyone's kind of in agreement that some of them are. You know what I mean? Like, some of them won't be in it. Whether they die or not, I have no idea. I haven't looked at any spoilers. I don't care to. But I'd see it as more of almost like an Endgame, level of film, as opposed to like, the next step in the MCU. I think a lot of people are going to be like, oh, well, that was satisfying, and then leave.
I
but
like that Endgame light as opposed to say Shang-Chi.
Right. Exactly. It doesn't. I don't think it's. Now, granted, the movie could come out and be totally different than I expect, but I don't see it as being portrayed as a stepping stone up as so much as a dead end, for lack of a better word. I just hope it's really satisfying, and I do think a lot of people will see it. The Marvels, I expect it to bomb. I do, and I hope I enjoy it, and I think I will. But okay. I don't see it. I think it's going to be a flop, because I just don't. For all the things that was mentioned already, like I just don't see the general public coming to see it. I don't. It's not. It hasn't even been built up. Like, is it a sequel to Captain Marvel? It's a combination of all these things without like that big draw in the center of it to make you want to go see it at the moment. I just don't see it in the cards for it. I think it's an easy one for the casual fan to dismiss and say, I'll just catch it when it comes on streaming. So I don't see it being a success at all.
All right. Well, there you have it. The cold, hard facts. Well, we'll call it Merv's personal truth about that. We'll see how it pans out when the movie gets released. Last but not least, yeah, he is, to be clear out there in the audience, he is not wishing that this film bombs. That is just his prognosis. And Grandmaster, what do you think? Volume 3, the Marvels, what's your prognosis? How are they going to do given Marvel's current matrix of challenges?
Guardians 3 is probably going to be a success. It's the opening to the summer movie season. That weekend usually tends to be big. So I think it's good. It's gonna do fine. Maybe not Volume 2 levels of box office success, but it will be a success. No doubt about it. The Marvels, I'm totally with Merv. I don't see it happening that it's going to be a success. For the same reasons Taylor mentioned, for the same reasons Merv mentioned, no interesting characters, at least not for the general audience or even the fans of the franchise. I mean, both, all three of them have had mixed reviews. And then I'm putting it nicely. And to put those three together in a movie, which we know nothing about, but we do know that they have had to make in intensive reshoots because
Yeah.
the test screenings didn't go well, and that was among friends and family, as you always point out, Lord Deathman. So, I mean, if they burn that movie to the ground, what is gonna do? What are the critics gonna do? What are the fans gonna do? Who are not too keen on Brie Larson, Iman Vellani, and Teyonah Parris's characters anyway? So, and I'm talking about characters. I'm not going to open the can of worms that Brie Larson had to undergo with the first movie. So, no, I have zero hopes for that movie to become a success. I will be happily surprised if it makes its initial budget back with its box office run. As Taylor has taught me many times, a movie will continue to make money on the long run. It will be a success anyway, but still, yeah. I don't think it will make its budget back as it stands now. I think it will go down in history as the worst Marvel movie
Ah,
performance-wise in the box office in history. And you may quote me on that, and you may come back to that in November when it makes $3 billion and beats Avatar.
the
Yeah,
highest grossing movie in the world. Yeah.
yeah, of all time. Maybe if that is the case, I will step back from the channel and never return again. But I have a feeling I won't have to. Yeah, and Guardians is going to be a great movie. I trust James Gunn to an extent. He sometimes has a tendency to overdo things. He did a little bit in Volume 2, which I love. I think it's brilliant, but he did overdo some stuff. And I saw the same in The Suicide Squad. So, yeah. I haven't seen Peacemaker yet. Shame on me, but I hadn't had access to HBO at that point, so I haven't gone around to it. So, but no, I trust James Gunn to an extent, and I think when it comes to story, when it comes to character, the man is absolutely brilliant, and that movie will rock, no
Yeah.
doubt. And it has Badlands in it. I mean, they dropped the soundtrack earlier this week, and it has a Bruce Springsteen song in it. So I'm good anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. He's fantastic at curating music, and he is a genius, I think, when it comes to character.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be something odd, off putting, a bit weird in the film. So I think we can expect some surprises. But thanks, guys, for sounding off in terms of your prognosis there. You heard it from the panel out there in the audience. Looks like Guardians of the Galaxy is likely to be a success, if not the towering success of pre Endgame releases that we had from Marvel Studios. And we're all sort of seriously doubting the prospects for the Marvels. You get the hard hitting truth here at the Podcast of Champions. That being said, this is the last topic we're going to be addressing on our Marvel update. But we do have a little bit of bonus content that we want to introduce at this particular point. There was a trailer for a hotly anticipated Disney Plus TV series that was recently released. And I want to get the panel's take on what they thought of the first piece of, well, the second piece of marketing, major marketing that we've seen for Secret Invasion.
Fury. Since you've been gone, things have gotten much worse. How do you think I came back?
You're in no shape for this fight that lies before us, old friend.
This is personal.
Very few of us know about the wars fought in the shadows that have raged on this planet. Do you feel responsible?
Where are the Avengers?
This war is one I have to fight alone.
You're the most wanted man on the planet.
You don't know what they have planned for you.
The great Nick Fury. One last fight.
Taylor, let's start with you. What was your take on that, Taylor? Does this series look like it's going to be everything that you were hoping for as far as a Secret Invasion adaptation?
I think it's going to be very good. The trailer looks really great. I mean, Sam Jackson and Nick Fury are always good, and I think he's going to get a chance to shine here. There's a couple of apparent writing decisions in there that I'm not too thrilled with. I'm kind of tired of the trope of the hero who's wanted by the law being chased by the authorities. I'm so tired of that. And I think the MCU in general has had some issues with that recently, with the messaging of, it's okay to shrink a cop's car and it's okay to get arrested, and the damage control, again, another law enforcement agency, they're the bad guys, and again, this alienates some of the audience. Okay, it's a fact. This messaging gets, and sometimes it gets way exaggerated, sometimes it gets taken out of context, but it sometimes does hurt with some of the audience. But again, I just don't like that trope because I've seen it a million times of the hero who's now, not only is he battling the villain, but he also has to dodge the law at the same time. Mission Impossible does it all the time too. They go rogue every movie. They go rogue. you know what I'm talking about. But yeah. Overall, though, the trailer looks really good. The story, of course, is going to be, I think, is going to be really great. The use of the Skrulls, and it's pretty clear now that there's going to be multiple factions or different factions within the Skrulls, and we now know that I don't remember the Skrull leader's name, but his daughter that we met in Captain Marvel is now grown up and plays a role in this. So I'm really looking forward to it, and it's only 6 episodes, is my understanding. So it's going to be a pretty concise story. I think it's going to be just kind of like a long movie, and it's a big story, so you probably need a long movie to get it all in there. But the trailer overall looks great.
Indeed. That Skrull's name is Talos. So yes. Thank you for your take on that. Jumping over to Grandmaster, new Secret Invasion trailer. Fury's looking a little tired, a little grizzled. He's not the guy who's in control and knows how all of the levers are being pulled and the gears are turning. What do you think of this new take?
Yeah, well, it's kind of expected. I really hope we find out when he went up into space. That's interesting to me. How long has Talos been impersonating Nick Fury on Earth? Is that since Captain Marvel or a little bit later? We don't know, but I'm really curious about that. But talk about the trailer. I absolutely loved it. It gave me strong Winter Soldier vibes. and which is one of the greater movies within the MCU. Certainly one of the best in Phase 2, if not the best. It felt like I felt its urgency, if you know what I mean. And yeah, I loved it, and I hope the series will live up to its promise now, because that has also been an issue. We've seen great trailers before, which turned out not to be so exciting as they promised. So I'm cautiously optimistic, I should say.
All right. All right. Yeah, got a lot of enthusiasm so far. Merv, I hope you're not ready to break the streak here. What did you think of the latest from those green big-eared hobgoblins?
Trailer looks fun. Looks like action. Looks like it'll be pretty action packed. I agree with Grandmaster sentiment. It gave me Winter Soldier vibes, maybe because that's really the only MCU film to feature Nick Fury in action, like in a good amount of action. But either way, like if it's anywhere close to Winter Soldier, I'll enjoy it tremendously. My only skepticism is that a lot of these Marvel shows have not met expectations, especially lately. So there is a big part of me that is worried that this will follow that suit, as opposed to like the WandaVision, for me, Hawkeye suit, which is like exceeding expectations. But I'll check it out just like any other one. I'm not sold on the 6-episode formula with Marvel. I don't know if they sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't tell the story properly in that amount of time. So I'm hoping that they can. And the trailer looks like I'm gonna enjoy it. So based on the trailer alone, I'm pretty excited for it.
All right. All right. Sounds good. Lots of love on this new trailer, and we've all got high hopes, maybe a little bit cautiously optimistic. I myself am going to go out on a limb and say that I'm expecting to see a certain Sharon Carter return in this series, and we find out that she isn't who she was claiming to be.
So basically, you're saying we should do cannon fodder for this show.
I think we're going to have to. Because every week somebody could not be who they're saying they are. That's all the fun, guys. That's all the fun of this particular series. But seriously, thanks again, guys, for sounding off on the Secret Invasion trailer. Unfortunately, that is all the time that we do have for today, as I have to close out this episode. I hope you've enjoyed the discussion, those of you who are listening at home. We want to thank you, our listeners, for tuning in and being a part of the Sakar community at sakar.freeforums.net. Stay tuned for more episode reviews and discussion on the podcast of Champion, including Secret Invasion reviews and Loki Season 2 reviews, and a whole lot more. Believe me, you're going to want to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. And until next time, true believers, we'll see you in the multiverse.